What if the words you laughed at were never meant to be funny? The rain tapped gently against the kitchen window as Claire sat at the wooden table, sipping from her favorite mug. The warm smell of cinnamon rolls filled the air, and across from her sat Daniel, her 10-year-old son, swinging his legs restlessly under the chair. He had that spark in his eyes that always made her smile, curious, innocent, and yet far wiser than his years. Mom, today at recess, I told my friends I could run faster than all of them. They didn't believe me, so I proved it, Daniel said proudly, stuffing a piece of roll into his mouth. Claire chuckled. Of course you did. You've always been quick, just like your dad used to be when he was your age. Daniel's grin widened, and for a moment, the kitchen glowed with that safe, ordinary warmth Claire longed for. But then, in a playful mood, she tilted her head and teased, "What happens when one day you get tired of me? You'll just leave your poor old mom and go run away with your friends." It was meant to be light-hearted, just a silly joke to hear him laugh again. And at first he did. His giggles bounced through the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. But suddenly he stopped. His laughter faded into a silence that was too heavy for a child to carry. His gaze shifted, serious now, his small hands pressing flat on the table. His next words pierced the air like glass shattering. "Mom, you're already halfway gone. You're always thinking about someone else." Claire's hand froze on her coffee mug. She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "What do you mean, Danny?" she asked, her voice trembling, though she tried to keep it light. Daniel only shrugged, as though he hadn't said anything important. "Nothing," he whispered, reaching for another bite, his eyes dropping back to the table. But Claire saw the flicker in his expression, the way children sometimes said truths without realizing how sharp they sounded. Her chest tightened. For a moment, the kitchen felt colder, as if the rain outside had slipped in. She forced a smile, ruffling his hair. "Silly boy, you say the strangest things." But inside, her heart raced. What could he mean? She was always with him, always making sure his lunch was packed, his homework checked, his bedtime stories read. Yet the weight of his words pressed down on her, pulling memories to the surface she had been trying to bury. The phone in her pocket buzzed, and instinctively she pulled it out. A single notification lit up the screen. Ethan. Just a message. Just a name. But she slipped the phone face down on the table before Daniel could notice. He was already watching her. Claire took a sip of her coffee to hide her unease. "Finish your roll, sweetheart. You'll be late for school." Daniel nodded but said nothing more. The silence between them grew louder than any laughter could have. Later, when the school bus pulled away, Claire stood at the curb, hugging her sweater tight against the wind. Daniel had waved from the window, his small hand pressed to the glass, but his eyes, they carried the echo of the words that refused to leave her mind, already halfway gone. She returned to the quiet house, the ticking clock on the wall marking every second of her unease. She tried to shake it off, tried to believe it was just a child's nonsense. But as she walked past the mirror in the hallway, she caught her reflection distant eyes. A distracted smile. Maybe Daniel had seen something she was too afraid to admit. That evening, as she stirred a pot of soup for dinner, she caught herself glancing at her phone again, the screen lighting up with Ethan's name once more. She didn't open it. She didn't dare. But the truth was there, glowing silently in the palm of her hand. Her son had noticed, and Claire couldn't stop hearing his voice. What did Daniel really mean by those words? Sometimes children see truths adults try to hide. The morning sunlight streamed through the blinds, but Claire felt no warmth. She stood at the counter, pouring Daniel's cereal, her mind still trapped in the memory of his words from last night. He ate quietly, every spoonful echoing in the silence between them. She tried to laugh, to make small talk about the weather, but nothing sounded natural. His little eyes kept darting toward her phone on the table, as though he expected it to ring at any moment. When the school bus arrived, Daniel grabbed his backpack and turned back with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Bye, Mom." His voice was soft, almost careful. Claire waved, her throat tight. As the bus drove off, she stood on the curb, wondering if her 10-year-old son knew more about her heart than she was willing to admit to at the office. Everything looked normal, people chatting by the coffee machine, papers stacked on desks, phones ringing. But Claire felt like she was standing in a different world, distracted and restless. She sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen, unable to focus on the emails piling up. "Claire?" A familiar voice interrupted. She looked up to see Ethan leaning on the edge of her desk, his smile easy, his eyes warm. "You okay? You look far away today." Her heart skipped. Ethan always noticed. That was the problem. She forced a small smile. "Just tired, that's all. Too much coffee, not enough sleep?" He teased gently, though his gaze lingered as if he saw right through her. Claire nodded, pretending to be busy with her keyboard. But deep inside, she knew the truth. Daniel had seen the way she smiled when Ethan was near. He had seen the softness in her voice when she answered his texts. Children notice the smallest things, things adults thought they could hide. By lunch, Claire tried to shake it off. She sat with coworkers, laughed at a few jokes, and pushed her salad around the plate. But every buzz of her phone made her stomach twist. She didn't dare look while others were near. Still, she knew Ethan's messages were waiting, just like they always did. That evening, back home, Daniel sat at the dining table working on his math homework. Claire walked over, brushing her fingers lightly through his hair. "Sweetheart, can I ask you something?" He didn't look up. "What?" "You said something yesterday about me thinking of someone else. What did you mean?" For a moment, Daniel kept writing, the pencil scratching across the page. Then he set it down and lifted his head. His eyes, so innocent yet so piercing, met hers. "Because you smile at your phone when it's not Dad." The air left her lungs. Her heart pounded so hard she thought he could hear it. "Daniel," she whispered, searching for words. "That's just work. Sometimes people from work text me." But even as she said it, she knew the excuse sounded thin. Daniel tilted his head, studying her with the sharp honesty only a child possessed. "Then why don't you smile like that when Dad talks to you?" The question stabbed deeper than she could bear. She reached for him, pulling him into her arms. "Oh, Danny, it's not what you think." But she didn't explain, because how could she? How could she tell her son about the storm inside her heart, the long hours, the tired marriage, the man at work who made her feel seen again? She pressed her lips to his forehead, holding him tighter, but Daniel only sighed, resting his head against her shoulder. "Mom," he whispered, "I just don't want you to be sad." Her eyes filled with tears. She kissed his hair and said nothing, because in that moment, she realized something terrifying. Her son wasn't just watching. He was protecting her in his own way. He could sense the cracks she thought she was hiding. When Daniel went to bed, Claire sat alone in the dim living room. Her phone lit up again, Ethan's name glowing in the dark. She stared at it, her hand trembling. One tap, and she could feel the warmth of his words. One tap, and she could escape the silence of her house, but Daniel's voice echoed in her ears. "You're already halfway gone." Claire turned the phone face down on the couch. She buried her face in her hands, torn between two worlds, the one she had promised to protect, and the one her heart secretly longed for. Claire's secret had a witness, her own son. The heart often betrays what the lips never confess. Claire lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the steady breathing of her husband Mark beside her. He slept so soundly, unaware of the storm in her chest. She turned to the window, where the streetlight cast long shadows across the room, and felt the ache of everything she couldn't say out loud. Daniel's words replayed like an echo she couldn't silence. Why don't you smile like that when Dad talks to you? The next morning, she moved through her routine like a ghost. Making coffee, packing Daniel's lunch, folding Mark's shirt for work. Her hands were busy, but her mind was elsewhere. She told herself nothing was wrong, that she was just tired. But deep inside, she knew this wasn't about fatigue. It was about feelings she had locked away, feelings she never meant to nurture. But somehow did Dot at the office, everything looked ordinary. Papers shuffled, phones rang, laughter floated down the hallway. But when Ethan walked in, Claire felt the air shift. He greeted her with that easy smile, the one that made her chest tighten. She tried to keep her eyes on her computer, but the warmth in his gaze pulled her in. "You look pale," he said quietly when no one was listening. "Are you sure you're okay?" She nodded quickly. "I'm fine, really." But he didn't believe her. Ethan leaned closer, his voice softer now. "Claire, if you ever need to talk, you know I'm here, right?" Her heart stumbled. The kindness in his tone was everything she had been missing. She wanted to reply, to pour out the loneliness, the cracks in her marriage, the quiet hours where she felt invisible. But she swallowed it back and forced a smile. "Thanks, Ethan. That means a lot." That evening, Claire stood by her bedroom window long after Mark had gone to bed. The city lights flickered in the distance, cars passed by, and her phone buzzed in her hand. She didn't need to look, she already knew who it was. "Ethan, are you okay? You seem distant today." "I just want to make sure you're all right." She typed a reply. "I'm fine. Just tired." Then deleted it. She typed again. "I don't know what to do anymore." Then deleted that too. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, her heart pounding. She saw her reflection in the glass, a woman with tired eyes, caught between loyalty and longing. And then a small voice broke the silence. "Mom?" Claire spun around. Daniel stood at the doorway, his pajamas slightly wrinkled, his hair sticking up. He rubbed his eyes, but his voice was clear. "You're crying." She quickly wiped her cheeks, hiding her phone behind her back. "No, sweetheart, I'm fine. Go back to bed." But Daniel stepped closer, his little face filled with worry. "I just don't want you to be sad, Mom." Her heart shattered. She pulled him into her arms, holding him tight against her chest. His warmth, his innocence, his love, everything she needed was right here. She kissed the top of his head, whispering, "I'll be okay. Don't worry about me." But Daniel only looked at her with those wise, unblinking eyes, as if he already knew more than she wanted him to when he finally went back to bed. Claire sat alone again, her phone still glowing on the nightstand. Ethan's message waited. Her hand trembled as she reached for it, her soul torn apart. She wanted to silence it forever, and yet she couldn't bear to let it go. She stared at the screen until her tears blurred the words. One message, one man, one choice. Could she keep hiding from both her son and her own heart? Every choice comes with a cost, but which one breaks less? The days that followed felt heavy, as though every second dragged a secret behind it. Claire moved through her life like someone wearing a mask, smiling at neighbors, answering emails, laughing faintly at Mark's small jokes. But beneath the surface, her heart was restless, her mind split in two. Ethan's name glowed on her phone again and again, yet she never answered. She thought ignoring it would silence the pull, but instead, the silence grew louder inside her Dot each morning. Daniel studied her quietly. He didn't ask more questions, but his eyes spoke volumes. He noticed the way her smile came late, how her laughter didn't quite sound like it used to. He noticed her checking her phone, then setting it down quickly. Children carried truths adults tried to bury, and Daniel carried hers like a mirror she couldn't turn away from. One evening, while Mark was in the garage fixing something, Claire and Daniel sat together on the couch. The TV flickered, but neither of them really watched. Daniel leaned against her shoulder, his voice soft. "You don't have to pretend with me, Mom. I just want you to be happy." Her throat tightened. His words were simple, but they broke her. She hugged him tightly, breathing in his innocence, his trust. And in that moment, she realized how deeply her choices were shaping not just her life, but his too. He saw everything. He felt everything. If she kept hiding, she wasn't just lying to Mark. She was teaching her son that love was about silence and secrets. Later that night, Claire stood in the kitchen, staring at the glow of her phone on the counter. Another message from Ethan. "I hope you're okay. I'm worried about you." She picked it up, her thumb trembling above the screen. She wanted to type back. She wanted to tell him everything, how lonely she felt, how he made her feel alive again, how his kindness reminded her of something she thought she'd lost forever. But then she heard Daniel's footsteps above her, moving around in his room. His voice echoed in her head. "I just don't want you to be sad, Mom." Claire set the phone down, pressing both hands to her face. She had never crossed the line, but she knew she was standing right on its edge. One more step, and she would not only lose herself, but also risk her son's trust. The next day, she tried harder. She laughed a little louder when Mark talked about work. She cooked his favorite meal. She tucked Daniel in with a story, even though her voice cracked halfway through. She thought maybe if she just tried, the feelings would go away. Maybe she could stitch her life back together before it tore completely. But the truth remained. She could not silence her heart forever. And the more she fought it, the heavier it grew. On Friday evening, after a long week, Claire found herself alone in the living room. Mark had fallen asleep in his chair, the TV buzzing faintly. Daniel was upstairs, already dreaming. The house was still, almost too still. Her phone lit up again, Ethan's name glowing in the dark. She stared at it for a long time. Her hand hovered, her breath caught. She knew that answering could change everything. She knew that silence would leave her drowning God in that moment. The choice lay before her, two roads, both painful. Stay silent and lose herself, or take the risk and shatter the life she had built. Her chest tightened, tears burning her eyes. She picked up the phone, her thumb hovering over the screen, and then she whispered to herself, broken and trembling, "Do I dare choose my heart? Or do I choose the life I've always known?" The phone buzzed again, waiting.